Hey folks, I'm Owl, this is Yarn Owl Reads, and today I'm doing my July wrap-up for 2018. So I read 9 things in July. Let's start with my goal reads. Those are books that I read off of my queer shelf. So that's from my fun little shark fellow over to here, and then this area. There's some books missing because they're in the pile I have down here to show you, or because I'm currently reading them. The queer book that I own that I read this month was Undead Girl Gang by Lily Anderson. I gave this one a 4.5 out of 5 stars. It was good, it was fun. I don't actually know that it's queer though. There isn't a queer relationship, and I feel like I've been told that the main character is bi, but I don't remember reading that. To be fair, I listened to the audiobook and it was sort of a stressful time when I was listening to the audiobook, so I might have just missed it. If you could let me know in the comments below whether I should be shelving this with my queer books or just my awesome books. Either way, it was good. I would love to see more books, especially YA books, because that's mostly what I read, that have Wiccan characters that don't actually have to do with magic or supernatural things, since Wicca is actually a religion. But that doesn't mean that this book was wrong or bad in any way. It was, in my opinion, it was wonderful. Mila is a high school girl. She is fat and Wiccan and possibly bi and Latina, and her best friend is dead. And the week before, 2 of her other classmates had died, and so she decides to take things into her own hands since nobody believes that her friend would never kill herself and must have been murdered. Her plan is to use magic to bring her friend back for 1 week so that they can help solve her murder. She also ends up accidentally bringing back the 2 other girls, and it sort of just goes from there. It is a fun adventure. It is a little bit sad because, I mean, you're dealing with death and grief, but the audiobook was fantastic and I highly recommend it. Now I'm just going to talk about my reads in the order in which I finished them. So first I finished Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. This book is fantastic. I love it. I think I gave it a 4.5. Yeah. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Upon re-read/re-listen, it might get 5 out of 5. I really want to own it so that I can just reread it whenever I want. We've got 6 main characters who are all very different people. This is set in the same world as the Grisha trilogy. So these 6 characters are trying to break somebody out of a very high security prison/stronghold. And it's just so interesting. I love that all the characters have their own agendas and thoughts and personalities, and they're all just so well written, and I love the adventure, and Inej owns my heart. I then read Hall Metal Girls by Emily Skrutsky. This ended up being a 5-star read. This story follows 2 girls, Aisha and Key, who were both transformed from just regular humans into these like cyborg soldier people who give up their autonomy to the government, and in return their families get money. Obviously, by my rating, I loved this book. It was exactly the fun sci-fi adventure that I needed. Fun might not actually be the right word. It is set in a dystopia. Aisha, one of the main characters, is Aroace, and also she brings Muslim representation to the book. She is not Muslim, and that they don't use the word Muslim, but she is part of like a futuristic version of being Muslim. For more of my thoughts on that one, I actually have the full review up on my blog. I received an e-arc of this from NetGalley to review, so you can go check that out. I'll leave the link below. Next, I read All Systems Red by Martha Wells. I gave this one a 4.5 out of 5. This follows Murderbot, who is again, also a cyborg sort of person, but Murderbot was never human. All of its components were made in a lab, whether organic or mechanical. And it uses it pronouns, which again I'm still a little weirded out by. I discussed a little in my feminism and sexism and sci-fi video, which I can do a card! This is my first card. I'll put a card up here. I want to read more of this series. I would love to see how Murderbot develops. In this first story, Murderbot is with a group of scientists on a planet that isn't habitated. They're doing studies there, and one of the other groups of scientists goes radio silent and dark and all of that, and so they go to see what's going on. And it's not like a super deep sci-fi story, but it's a really well written sci-fi story, and I loved it to pieces. Then I read Undead Girl Gang. I already told you about that. In case you're wondering why I'm looking down, I started a bullet journal, and so I'm keeping track of all of the things that I've read, and yeah, I'm hoping that it's going to help me when I start school again. School is very stressful for me in the last couple of years, and so hopefully this will help keep everything going smoothly. Fingers crossed. Next, I read What If It's Us by Becky Albertalli and Adam Silvera. I gave this 4.25 out of 5 stars. Wow, I don't know if I'm actually giving it that, but that's what's written in the bullet journal. I really did like it. There were definitely moments where it was really cringy and that made me uncomfortable. I don't do well with cringe because my anxiety is just like, nah, nope, we don't need that, but there's enough of that in life. But it was very realistic. It was just very true to life. And the cringe moments, you get over them. They're the awkward, sometimes miscommunications happen or people just don't quite mesh. Like, it was very real. And I loved that, even if at moments it made me hurt a little inside. What If It's Us comes out in October. I will post a full review closer to the day it comes out. But yeah, all in all, I liked it. Next, I read The Martian Chronicles by Ray Bradbury for the S'more Sci-Fi Book Club. The first episode of that is definitely out now. I'm assuming the second episode for the podcast is out. If you didn't know, S'more Sci-Fi Book Club is a podcast book club with the Marshmallow Commonwealth, and every month they release a sci-fi title that they're going to be discussing in 2 episodes on their podcast. And it's all like classic sci-fi stuff, and this month I read along with them, and it was The Martian Chronicles, which I gave it 3.5 stars because sexism and awkwardness. You can hear more about that also in my feminism and sexism and sci-fi. That's what sparked the whole decision to make that video. I did end up really liking it. It is a set of short stories that are all around the human missions to Mars and like habitation of Mars. It takes place over the course of a decent span of time. I love Ray Bradbury's writing. One of my favorite stories is in The Martian Chronicles that he wrote, There Will Come Soft Rains. I did like it, but it also made me unhappy and uncomfortable many times and allowed me to be grateful for the sci-fi that I've been reading and how it doesn't hold to those same standards. Next, I read Sunstone Book 1 by Stephen Shaich. This is a graphic novel that follows a queer BDSM couple. It's just a super sweet story about, at least book 1 is about them finding each other online and slowly getting to know each other in person, and it is, I would say it's mature, not explicit, if we're going off of like archive of our own ratings. There is nudity and they do talk a lot about sex, but there's never any like explicit sexual content. So, in case you're looking to read it, now you know. I loved this. It was just so sweet, and like, it discussed aftercare and it discussed problems with BDSM's image in media, and mostly it was just a really fun love story, and I cannot wait to read book 2. I borrowed this from a friend and I'm very much looking forward to trading out book 1 for book 2 because I need to know what happens next. Sorry if the angle keeps changing. I keep having to take my phone out of the tripod so that I can look up how to pronounce people's names. So the next thing I read in July was Hurricane Child by Corinne Callender. This is I listened to it on audiobook. It's a 4-hour audiobook. The narration was awesome. It isn't a very, like, plot-driven story. It is more character-driven, which you don't see a lot of in middle grade, and I loved it. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. There is some homophobia mentioned. The main character is queer in some way. She is a girl who is attracted to other girls, and there is a FF relationship in this in some capacity. I don't want to spoil the who and the what and everything, but you read, you see, you will find out. This follows the main character whose mother left a year and a few months ago, and she wants to know where her mother is, and she thinks that the ghosts that she sees around the island might be able to help her figure that out. This is magical realism. It's set in the Virgin Islands. It's a pretty sweet, just like, it's a lot about her trying to find her mother and her understanding what family means, and I highly recommend it. It's a pretty quick read, so you should check it out. And finally, my last read in July was Mask of Shadows by Lindsay Miller. It took me way too long to get through it again, but I did. I'm doing a reading vlog of my experiences rereading Mask of Shadows and then reading the sequel, Rune of Stars, which comes out this month, sometime in August. And I will talk about that more in my plan video. I am partway through it. I was hoping to get it finished by the end of July so that I could talk about it in this video, but alas, it's gonna have to wait a little bit. I do start grad school again. It's my last year of grad school 1 week from today, and my goal is to have everything that I want to read for fun finished by then, unless it's an audiobook that I can listen to at work, but all of the eyeball reading that I'm going to try and do before classes start again, which is why all of my arcs have now been read for the rest of the year except for Rune of Stars. I'm making my way through that. Upon reread, I ended up giving Mask of Shadows 4 out of 5 stars again. The world building isn't amazing, the writing isn't as good as I had remembered it to be, but the characters are still just fantastic. I still love the story, and I love the way she's handling it in the second book, but again, I'll talk about that more later. Check out the reading vlog when it's up. So those were my reads in July. As far as my plan went, I actually stuck pretty close to it this time. I obviously added quite a few books, but the only one that is in my plan list that I outright didn't read, was Girl Who Rides Like a Man by Tamara Pierce. That's the third book in the Lioness Rampant series, and I thought that I might not get to that. Like, I was feeling a Tamara Pierce vibe in my soul that I needed to read some of her books, but I read the second one in her Lioness Rampant series, and that's my favorite one, so after I read that I was just sort of done for a bit. If you'd like to find me on other social media, I am on Goodreads, Instagram, Twitter, and WordPress, all under Yarn Owl Reads. If you have questions or comments, you know where to put them. If you've read any of these books, let me know what you thought, and other than that, I'll see y'all later. Bye!